Alex had always been a planner. Ever since childhood, they dreamed of owning a piece of land, somewhere quiet and peaceful where life could slow down just a little. That dream became a reality when Alex purchased a small plot in their hometown, tucked away from the hustle and bustle of city life. It wasn't much to look at, a patch of open space surrounded by trees, but it was perfect for what Alex envisioned, a cozy cabin someday, maybe even a weekend getaway spot. Until then, Alex decided to lease it out occasionally, to make some extra income while keeping it maintained. Life threw Alex an exciting opportunity when their company offered them a chance to work abroad for 2 years. The project promised professional growth and exposure to new cultures, something Alex couldn't pass up. Before leaving, Alex made sure everything back home was in order. Bills were set on autopay, mail forwarded to a trusted friend, and the land? Well, Alex figured there was no harm in letting it sit empty for a couple of years. After all, it wasn't as if anyone would suddenly take interest in a vacant plot far from the main road. With one last glance at their property, Alex boarded the plane, ready for adventure. Fast forward 2 years, and Alex returned home with stories to tell, souvenirs in tow, and a renewed sense of purpose. But stepping back into familiar surroundings came with an unexpected twist. As Alex reconnected with friends and neighbors, someone casually mentioned seeing tents pitched on their land over the past year. At first, Alex thought it must have been a misunderstanding, a rogue camper or perhaps kids playing around. But curiosity soon turned to concern when another neighbor confirmed they'd seen people coming and going regularly, paying rent to use the space. Confused and slightly alarmed, Alex drove straight to the property. Sure enough, tire tracks crisscrossed, the dirt flattened grass-marked spots where tents had been set up, and remnants of campfires dotted the area. Someone had clearly been using the land, and not just once, but repeatedly. A sinking feeling settled in Alex's stomach. Who would dare trespass like this? And why hadn't anyone told them sooner? The answers came sooner than expected. Back in the neighborhood, Alex bumped into Karen, the self-appointed queen bee of the local homeowners association, HOA. Karen was infamous for her nosiness and love of rules, often patrolling the streets to ensure everyone followed the HOA guidelines to the letter. She greeted Alex with a sugary smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, you're back," she exclaimed. "I hope you don't mind, but I took care of your land while you were gone." "Took care of?" Alex echoed, raising an eyebrow. "What exactly do you mean?" Karen waved a hand dismissively. "Well, it seemed such a waste to leave it sitting there doing nothing. So I rented it out to campers. Don't worry, I kept track of everything." Her tone suggested this was both a favor and a done deal, as though Alex should feel grateful. Alex stared at her dumbfounded. "You rented out my land? Without asking me?" Karen shrugged, unfazed. "You never said you didn't want me to. Honestly, Alex, you've been gone for 2 whole years. Silence speaks louder than words, doesn't it? I assumed you were okay with it." "Assumed?" Alex clenched their fists, trying to keep calm. This wasn't just about unauthorized use of private property. It was about entitlement. Karen acted like she had every right to step into Alex's shoes simply because Alex hadn't been physically present. It was infuriating and deeply unsettling. Over the next few days, Alex pieced together more details. Neighbors whispered about how Karen had approached them too, offering to manage unused properties in exchange for a cut of the profits. Some refused outright, while others reluctantly agreed, fearing backlash from the HOA if they crossed her. One elderly couple admitted they regretted giving in, only to find Karen pocketing most of the earnings herself. Yet no one dared confront her directly. Karen ruled the neighborhood with an iron fist, doling out fines and penalties whenever someone stepped out of line. As Alex dug deeper, they discovered receipts and informal contracts Karen had drawn up, complete with signatures from unsuspecting renters. These documents bore Karen's name, not Alex's, as the official landlord. Worse still, Karen had charged premium rates, pocketing thousands of dollars meant for Alex. Every detail painted a picture of calculated manipulation, leaving Alex seething with anger and disbelief. This wasn't just negligence, it was theft. And Karen's flimsy excuse of implied consent wouldn't hold water. Alex knew they couldn't let this slide, not for their own sake, but for the sake of everyone else Karen might target next. Something had to be done. But how does one fight against someone so entrenched in power, so convinced of their own righteousness? Little did Alex know, this discovery would mark the beginning of a battle unlike any other, one that would test their patience, resilience, and faith in justice. For now, though, Alex stood frozen on their driveway, staring at the land that had become ground zero for betrayal and greed. The question lingered heavy in the air. What comes next? The days following Alex's discovery were a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, disbelief, and frustration churned inside them as they tried to process what had happened. Karen's audacity was staggering. How could someone simply take control of another person's property without permission? And how could she justify it with such flimsy reasoning? The phrase implied consent echoed in Alex's mind like a bad joke. It wasn't just wrong, it was absurd. Yet Karen seemed utterly convinced that her actions were justified. Determined to confront her directly, Alex decided to attend the next HOA meeting. They knew these gatherings often devolved into Karen's personal soapbox sessions, where she lectured residents about minor infractions like overgrown lawns or mismatched mailbox colors. But this time, Alex planned to turn the tables. If Karen wanted to play games, Alex would make sure everyone heard the truth. The evening of the meeting arrived, and Alex walked into the community center with a mix of nerves and resolve. The room buzzed with chatter as neighbors caught up before the official agenda began. Some greeted Alex warmly, asking about their time abroad, while others avoided eye contact altogether. Word had already spread about the brewing conflict between Alex and Karen, and many seemed uneasy about being caught in the crossfire. Karen sat at the front of the room, clipboard in hand, exuding an air of authority that made Alex's skin crawl. As soon as the meeting started, she launched into her usual spiel about neighborhood standards and upcoming projects. Her tone was clipped and commanding, leaving little room for interruption. But Alex wasn't there to listen to her lecture. When the floor opened for questions, Alex raised their hand firmly. "Yes, Alex?" Karen said, her smile tight and forced. "Welcome back. I trust you've settled in?" Alex ignored the thinly veiled sarcasm. "Actually, Karen, I'd like to address something important. While I was away, I discovered that my land was being rented out, without my knowledge or permission. Imagine my surprise when I found out you were the one handling those arrangements." A murmur rippled through the room as heads turned toward Karen. She didn't miss a beat, leaning back in her chair with an exaggerated sigh. "Oh, Alex, we've been over this. You left your property vacant for 2 years. That's practically an invitation for someone to step in and put it to good use. I was doing you a favor." "A favor?" Alex repeated, incredulous. "You mean renting out my land and keeping the money for yourself?" Karen pursed her lips, clearly annoyed that Alex wasn't backing down. "I kept meticulous records," she said defensively. "And besides, if you really cared about your property, you would have stayed involved. Your silence gave me every reason to believe you were fine with it." The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Neighbors exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to side with Alex or avoid drawing Karen's ire. Alex took a deep breath, refusing to let Karen twist the narrative. "Silence doesn't equal consent, Karen. You can't just claim ownership of something that isn't yours because it's convenient for you. This is theft, plain and simple." Karen's face flushed red, but she quickly masked her anger with a patronizing smirk. "Let's not get dramatic here, Alex. I'm sure we can come to an understanding. Maybe split the profits 50-50? After all, I did handle everything on your behalf." The suggestion was laughable. Alex felt their blood boil at the sheer gall of it. "No deal," they shot back. "This isn't negotiable. What you did was illegal, and I won't stand for it." The tension in the room was palpable. Some neighbors shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others nodded subtly in agreement with Alex. One brave soul, a retired teacher named Mrs. Henderson, spoke up. "Karen, I think Alex has a point. Renting out someone else's property without their consent isn't right, no matter how you spin it. Karen shot her a sharp look, silencing any further dissent. "We're straying off topic," she snapped. "This isn't the place to hash out personal disputes." With that, she moved on to the next item on the agenda, effectively shutting down the conversation. But Alex wasn't done. They stood up, addressing the room directly. "Listen, everyone. I know Karen likes to act like she runs this neighborhood, but what she did to me isn't okay. If she can do this to my property, who's to say she won't target someone else's next? We deserve transparency and accountability, not manipulation and greed." The words hung in the air, resonating with several attendees. A few people murmured in agreement, though most remained quiet, unwilling to provoke Karen's wrath. Still, Alex could see the seeds of doubt taking root. For years, Karen had operated unchecked, exploiting her position as HOA president to bend rules and bully neighbors. But now cracks were beginning to show in her carefully constructed facade. After the meeting ended, Alex lingered behind, approached by a handful of curious neighbors. One man, Mr. Patel, pulled Alex aside. "I don't want to cause trouble," he whispered, "but Karen's been pressuring me to let her manage my rental unit too. I refused, but, well, things have felt tense ever since." Another neighbor, Lisa, chimed in. "She fined me last month for having a flower pot that was too colorful. It's ridiculous, but I didn't know what to do. Maybe if more of us spoke up." Their stories confirmed what Alex suspected. Karen wasn't just targeting them personally. She was exploiting the entire community. Her behavior wasn't just unethical, it was systemic. And Alex realized that confronting her wasn't just about reclaiming their land anymore. It was about standing up for everyone who had been intimidated into silence. That night, lying awake in bed, Alex replayed the meeting in their mind. They couldn't unsee the fear in their neighbor's eyes or the smug satisfaction on Karen's face as she dismissed their accusations. Something had to change, but Alex knew they couldn't fight this battle alone. They needed evidence, allies, and a solid plan. Most importantly, they needed justice, not just for themselves, but for everyone affected by Karen's abuse of power. The wheels in Alex's mind began turning. They reached out to a trusted friend who recommended a lawyer specializing in property disputes. Armed with determination and a growing sense of purpose, Alex vowed to hold Karen accountable. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about exposing the truth and ensuring no one else fell victim to her schemes. As dawn broke the next morning, Alex felt a renewed sense of clarity. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they were ready to fight. Whatever it took, Karen's reign of manipulation was about to meet its match, and Alex intended to deliver the knockout blow. The decision to take legal action against Karen was not one Alex made lightly. It meant stepping into unfamiliar territory, navigating the complexities of the law, and facing potential pushback from neighbors who might fear retaliation. But Alex knew they couldn't let this slide, not when so much was at stake. With their mindset, Alex reached out to a lawyer recommended by a close friend. The attorney, Ms. Carter, specialized in property disputes and had a reputation for being sharp, strategic, and relentless. Their first meeting took place in Ms. Carter's sleek downtown office. Sunlight streamed through the large windows as Alex laid out the entire story. The discovery of unauthorized renters on their land, Karen's audacious claims of implied consent, and the brazen way she had profited off someone else's property. Ms. Carter listened intently, jotting down notes before leaning back in her chair with a thoughtful expression. "This is an interesting case," she said finally. "Karen's argument about implied consent won't hold up in court, but we'll need solid evidence to prove your ownership and demonstrate her misconduct. Are you prepared to go all in?" Alex nodded without hesitation. "Absolutely. I want justice, not just for me, but for everyone she's taken advantage of." With Ms. Carter on board, Alex dove headfirst into gathering evidence. The process was painstaking but necessary. First, they retrieved copies of their property deed, tax records, and any correspondence related to the land. These documents were irrefutable proof that Alex owned the property outright. Next, Alex tracked down former renters who had unknowingly paid Karen for use of the land. Many were shocked to learn they'd been duped, and several agreed to provide written statements detailing their experiences. One couple, John and Sarah, recounted how Karen approached them at a local farmer's market, offering a great deal to camp on what she claimed was her own land. They described signing a makeshift contract bearing Karen's name and paying her directly via Cash App. When Alex showed them photos of the actual property deed, their eyes widened in disbelief. "We had no idea," John admitted. "She seemed so official." These testimonies added weight to Alex's case, painting Karen as a calculated opportunist preying on unsuspecting individuals. But the most damning piece of evidence came from an unexpected source: emails. During the investigation, Alex discovered archived messages where Karen discussed renting out multiple properties, including theirs, with other members of the HOA board. In one particularly incriminating exchange, she boasted about the profits she'd made and casually mentioned plans to expand her operation. As the pieces fell into place, Alex began connecting the dots beyond their personal ordeal. It became clear that Karen wasn't just targeting absentee landlords like themselves. She had systematically exploited others in similar situations. A retired veteran named Mr. Thompson revealed that Karen had pressured him into letting her manage his unused garage space only to pocket rental fees intended for him. Another resident, Lisa, shared how Karen fined her repeatedly for minor infractions while simultaneously demanding access to her backyard shed for storage, rent-free, of course. Each story reinforced Alex's determination to expose Karen's pattern of abuse. What started as a personal grievance evolved into a broader mission to protect the community from further exploitation. Ms. Carter encouraged Alex to document everything meticulously, emphasizing that even small details could strengthen their case. Together, they compiled a comprehensive file containing deeds, witness statements, financial records, and communications, all pointing squarely at Karen's fraudulent behavior. Meanwhile, word spread quietly among neighbors about Alex's lawsuit. Some expressed cautious optimism, hoping it would finally rein in Karen's unchecked power. Others remained hesitant, wary of crossing her or becoming collateral damage in the fallout. Despite the mixed reactions, Alex found comfort in knowing they weren't entirely alone. A small but growing group of residents began sharing their own grievances, forming a loose coalition determined to support Alex's efforts. One evening, Alex hosted an informal gathering at their home, inviting trusted neighbors to discuss the situation. Over coffee and snacks, stories poured out, each more infuriating than the last. There was Mrs. Henderson, who had been threatened with fines for planting wildflowers deemed non-compliant. Then there was Mr. Patel, whose tenant complained about Karen showing up unannounced to inspect the property under the guise of HOA regulations. Even Lisa, who initially hesitated to speak out, shared how Karen manipulated her into paying for unnecessary repairs, while skimming funds meant for community projects. Listening to these accounts, Alex felt a surge of resolve. This wasn't just about reclaiming stolen money or punishing Karen for her greed. It was about restoring trust and accountability within the neighborhood. By standing together, they could dismantle the toxic culture Karen had cultivated and pave the way for meaningful change. As preparations for the lawsuit intensified, Alex also faced moments of doubt. Legal battles were expensive, time-consuming, and emotionally draining. Would the outcome be worth the effort? Could they truly bring down someone as entrenched in power as Karen? Late at night, lying awake staring at the ceiling, Alex wrestled with these questions. But every time they thought about backing down, they remembered the faces of their neighbors, the fear in their eyes, the frustration in their voices. Those images fueled their determination to see this through. Ms. Carter reassured Alex that they had a strong case. "Fraud is fraud," she explained during one strategy session, "and Karen's actions leave little room for interpretation. With the evidence we've gathered, we're not just aiming to win, we're aiming to send a message." That message resonated deeply with Alex. This fight wasn't just about winning, it was about proving that no one, regardless of their position or influence, was above the law. Justice wasn't just a concept, it was a tangible goal worth fighting for. With each passing day, Alex grew more confident in their decision. The groundwork was laid, the team was assembled, and the stakes were higher than ever. As they stood on the brink of taking Karen to court, Alex knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But they also knew they weren't walking it alone. Armed with evidence, allies, and unwavering resolve, Alex was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead and ensure Karen faced the consequences of her actions once and for all. The courtroom was quiet but charged with tension as Alex sat at the plaintiff's table, their fingers nervously tapping against a folder filled with evidence. Across the aisle, Karen exuded an air of false confidence, her perfectly styled hair and designer suit making her look every bit the powerful figure she believed herself to be. Behind them, a handful of neighbors had gathered, some curious, others quietly rooting for Alex. The judge entered and everyone stood, the gravity of the moment settling over the room like a heavy blanket. Ms. Carter, Alex's lawyer, opened the case with precision and clarity. She laid out the facts. Alex owned the land in question, as evidenced by official property deeds and tax records. Despite this, Karen had rented it out without permission, collected payments from unsuspecting tenants, and claimed that Alex's absence amounted to implied consent. Ms. Carter emphasized how absurd Karen's argument was. "Silence does not equal agreement," she said firmly, her voice steady. "To suggest otherwise is to rewrite the very principles of ownership and consent." Karen's lawyer countered by portraying her actions as well-intentioned. He argued that Karen saw an opportunity to prevent the land from going unused and simply stepped in to manage it responsibly. "My client acted in good faith," he insisted. "She believed she was doing what was best for both the community and the property owner." The claim drew murmurs from the gallery, but Alex remained focused. They knew better than anyone that Karen's so-called goodwill masked greed and entitlement. When it came time for testimony, Alex took the stand, answering questions calmly yet resolutely. They described discovering tents on their land upon returning home, the shock of learning Karen had been profiting off it, and the subsequent confrontation at the HOA meeting. Alex recounted Karen's dismissive attitude and her insistence that silence equaled approval. Under cross-examination, Karen's lawyer tried to paint Alex as neglectful, suggesting they bore partial responsibility for leaving their land unattended. But Alex didn't falter. "Owning property doesn't mean giving up your rights," they replied evenly. "No one gets to decide what happens to my land except me." Next, witnesses were called to testify. John and Sarah, the couple who had rented the land unknowingly, recounted their experience dealing with Karen. They described signing contracts bearing her name and paying her directly. When shown copies of Alex's property deed, they expressed disbelief. "We thought we were renting legally," Sarah admitted. "If we'd known the truth, we never would have agreed." Other neighbors followed, sharing their own encounters with Karen. Mr. Thompson detailed how she pressured him into letting her manage his garage space, only to keep the rental fees for herself. Lisa spoke about the fines and demands Karen levied against her while simultaneously using her shed without permission. Each story added another layer to the portrait of Karen as someone who exploited her position for personal gain. Then came the emails, damning documents retrieved during discovery. Ms. Carter presented them one by one, highlighting exchanges, where Karen discussed renting out multiple properties and boasted about the profits she made. In one particularly explosive email, she joked about turning vacant lots into cash cows. The judge examined the evidence closely, his expression growing increasingly stern. Karen finally took the stand, attempting to defend herself with a mix of indignation and deflection. She reiterated her claim of acting in the community's best interest, insisting she never intended to harm anyone. But under Ms. Carter's pointed questioning, cracks began to show. When asked why she hadn't sought Alex's permission before renting out the land, Karen stumbled, claiming it didn't occur to her. When pressed about the emails, she dismissed them as taken out of context, though her answers grew more evasive with each question. The turning point came when a whistleblower, a former HOA board member named Greg, was called to testify. Greg revealed that Karen had embezzled funds meant for neighborhood improvements, funneling them into her own accounts. He produced financial records showing discrepancies in HOA expenses, including inflated invoices and non-existent projects. His testimony sent ripples through the courtroom, further eroding Karen's credibility. By the end of the trial, the contrast between Alex and Karen couldn't have been starker. Alex appeared honest, composed, and determined to right a wrong. Karen, on the other hand, seemed defensive, manipulative, and increasingly desperate as her defenses crumbled. The final arguments wrapped up and the judge retired to deliberate. When he returned, the verdict was decisive. Karen was found guilty of fraudulently renting out Alex's land and ordered to pay restitution for all profits made, along with punitive damages for her misconduct. Additionally, she was stripped of her position as HOA president and barred from holding any leadership roles within the organization moving forward. The ruling sent a clear message. Abuse of power and exploitation wouldn't be tolerated. As the 80 gavel struck, a wave of relief washed over Alex. Justice had been served, not just for them, but for everyone who had suffered under Karen's schemes. Neighbors exchanged glances, some smiling faintly, others nodding in quiet satisfaction. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited, eager for comments. Alex declined to speak extensively, offering only a brief statement. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. I hope this sends a message that no one is above the law. Back in the neighborhood, news of the verdict spread quickly. For many residents, it marked the beginning of a new chapter. Freed from Karen's oppressive grip, they began discussing ways to reform the HOA, ensuring transparency and fairness. Moving forward, some even approached Alex, thanking them for having the courage to stand up to Karen when no one else dared. But for Alex, the victory wasn't just about vindication. It was about resilience. Facing Karen in court had been daunting, but it also taught them the value of perseverance and speaking truth to power. As they stood outside their reclaimed land later that evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Alex felt a profound sense of peace. The battle had been hard-fought, but the outcome proved that justice, though sometimes slow, could prevail when pursued with determination and integrity. The weeks following the trial brought a sense of calm to Alex's life that had been missing for months. The land, once a source of frustration and betrayal, now stood as a symbol of triumph, a reminder that standing up for what is right can lead to meaningful change. But Alex knew this victory wasn't just personal, it was communal. Their fight against Karen had uncovered deep-rooted issues within the neighborhood, ones that couldn't be ignored any longer. Word of Karen's downfall spread like wildfire through the community. At first, there was cautious optimism. Neighbors, who had previously feared her wrath, began speaking more openly about their experiences. Some shared stories similar to Alex's, instances where Karen had overstepped boundaries or manipulated situations for her benefit. Others revealed smaller grievances, unjust fines, unreasonable demands, and favoritism toward certain residents. It became clear that Karen's reign hadn't just affected Alex. It had cast a shadow over the entire neighborhood. Inspired by Alex's courage, several residents decided to take action. They formed an informal committee to address ongoing concerns about the HOA and propose reforms. Alex joined enthusiastically, seeing it as an opportunity to help rebuild trust and ensure fairness moving forward. Together, they drafted a list of changes: greater transparency in financial records, term limits for leadership positions, and stricter guidelines for enforcing rules. They also suggested regular town hall meetings where neighbors could voice their opinions without fear of retaliation. At one such meeting, held in the same community center where Alex had first confronted Karen, emotions ran high. People spoke candidly about how Karen's behavior had impacted them. Mrs. Henderson tearfully recounted how she'd stopped gardening because Karen repeatedly fined her for non-compliant flowers. Mr. Patel described feeling powerless when Karen bullied him into letting her use his garage space. Even Lisa admitted she'd avoided attending HOA events altogether, fearing another confrontation. As painful as these stories were, they sparked something powerful: unity. For years, Karen's divisive tactics had pitted neighbors against each other fostering resentment and mistrust. Now people were coming together not to assign blame but to create solutions. The atmosphere shifted from tension to collaboration, with everyone contributing ideas on how to make the neighborhood stronger. One proposal gained particular traction, electing a new HOA board composed of volunteers committed to inclusivity and accountability. Nominations poured in, and Alex found themselves nominated alongside several trusted neighbors. Though hesitant at first, Alex accepted, realizing their involvement could inspire others to stay engaged. The election process was refreshingly democratic, with candidates presenting platforms focused on rebuilding the community rather than wielding power. When the votes were tallied, Alex was elected president of the newly reformed HOA. Accepting, the role felt surreal. Just months earlier, they had dreaded even attending meetings. But now Alex saw it as an opportunity to turn the page and set a positive example. Alongside fellow board members, they implemented long overdue changes, including publishing detailed financial reports online and hosting open forums for feedback. Slowly but surely, faith in the HOA began to return. Karen, meanwhile, faded into obscurity. Stripped of her position and facing mounting legal fees from additional lawsuits filed by disgruntled neighbors, she withdrew from public life. Rumors circulated that she planned to move out of the neighborhood entirely, though no one seemed particularly upset by the prospect. Her legacy served as a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when unchecked ambition overrides ethics and compassion. For Alex, the transformation extended beyond the neighborhood. The ordeal had changed them in profound ways. Before, they might have hesitated to challenge authority or stand up for themselves. Now they carried a quiet confidence born from knowing they had fought and won a battle many would have shied away from. They learned the importance of persistence, teamwork, and believing in the possibility of justice, even when the odds seemed stacked against them. The land itself underwent a transformation too. With Karen gone and the neighborhood healing, Alex finally fulfilled their original dream of building a cabin on the property. Construction began shortly after the trial, with friends and neighbors pitching in wherever they could. Some helped clear debris left behind by campers, while others volunteered to paint walls or lay flooring. What started as a solitary vision became a collective effort, strengthening bonds across the community. On the day the cabin was completed, Alex hosted a small gathering to celebrate. Neighbors mingled under strings of twinkling lights, sharing laughter and food. Someone brought a guitar and impromptu songs filled the air. As Alex looked around at the smiling faces, they felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the support they'd received, but for the resilience of the human spirit. Despite everything they'd endured, goodness had prevailed. In the months that followed, Alex continued to play an active role in the neighborhood, advocating for policies that prioritized kindness and cooperation. They organized cleanup days, holiday potlucks, and even a community garden inspired by Mrs. Henderson's love of wildflowers. Each initiative brought people closer together, transforming the once divided suburb into a tight-knit haven. Looking back, Alex realized how much they had grown, not just personally but professionally. The skills they'd honed during the legal battle, problem-solving, communication, leadership, proved invaluable in their career. Upon returning to work, they approached projects with renewed focus and creativity, earning recognition from colleagues and supervisors alike. Life abroad had opened doors, but the journey home had shaped them in ways they never anticipated. The land remained a cornerstone of Alex's life, a testament to perseverance and hope. On quiet evenings, they often sat outside the cabin, watching fireflies dance among the trees. It was peaceful here, a stark contrast to the chaos of recent months. Yet every rustle of leaves and chirp of crickets reminded Alex of how far they'd come. Though scars lingered from the ordeal, they served as reminders of lessons learned. Silence doesn't equal consent. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. And sometimes standing up for yourself means standing up for others too. As the seasons changed and the neighborhood flourished, Alex knew their story wasn't just about reclaiming stolen profits or exposing corruption. It was about finding strength in vulnerability, connection in adversity, and purpose in struggle. The land that had once symbolized betrayal now represented redemption, a beacon of hope for anyone daring enough to believe in justice and the power of community.